Donald Trump is the fleshly thesaurus. And the concrete definition of what black folk been trying to warn America about for 400 years. Now you get a chance to see it. We told you it was narcissistic. It was lethally unintelligent.
It was sexist,
misogynistic, patriarchal. It's against everything that's human.
And greedy and
predatory. And self-defeating. And will turn on itself, will cut a hole in the ship that all of us are traveling on to satisfy its thirst for revenge and greed. And so, right, I mean, to me, Donald Trump cannot be an exception, because if he's an exception, we can wash our hands. Oh my God, we got rid of him. Lindsey Graham, you were a problem with or without Trump. Mitch McConnell, you were a problem with or without Trump. Because what you do is perpetuate a legacy of inequality, justify it as the normative action of American democracy, only when an exceptional threat like Donald Trump that everybody can see is a problem do you acknowledge finally that white supremacy is a problem, but it is a problem every day in the interstices of American culture, in the invisible spaces, in the inaudible moans and cries of a people who cannot be heard because they will not be amplified by the empathy that now white brothers and sisters have with us, because finally they get the message. If Donald Trump is what y'all been dealing with, my God, this thing has been horrible. It is, except Donald Trump ain't the worst of what we've seen. The reason we have hope, because we done see, look, Jim Crow, enslavement, Reconstruction, we done been through a lot worse than this.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? But white brothers and sisters are now finally seeing the tyranny and terror of white supremacy and what it can do to your civilization. Calls on Turkey, Ukraine, right? This is what ignorant, unenlightened, unmolested by enlightenment does to an American culture. White supremacy is bad for white brothers and sisters.
Sometimes the most important conversation in politics are not about who won an election. They are about why society keeps struggling with the same problems generations after generations. And that is exactly what makes the conversations between Professor Michael Eric Dyson and author Heather McGee so powerful. They are not simply talking about Donald Trump. They are talking about something much deeper. The way racial inequality has shaped America's society, and how those consequences can reach far beyond race itself. Guys, that is the kind of a video that we are going to watch today. Otherwise, guys, remember to subscribe, and I'll be back with my 2 cents.
4 years ago now, I was on television on the show on C-SPAN called Washington Journal, which is like a live radio call-in show, and but it's on TV. And halfway through, somebody called in and identified himself as Gary from North Carolina, and his first words were, "I'm a white male, and I am prejudiced."
Right.
Now, this is live television, and the whole shot is a real close-up of my face as I have to react to this.
Right.
You know, I'm on there talking about taxes and jobs and voting rights, you know, and he just says, "I'm prejudiced," and he goes on to detail his prejudice and great storytelling about his fear of black men and crime and gangs and drugs. And I'm sort of holding my breath and nodding, and then he says to me, and I will never forget it, he says, "But I want to change and become a better American. And I want to know what your guest can do to tell me to do."
Yeah, that was a famous moment right there.
So, you know, this moment went viral. I answered him. I finally exhaled, I think. And I said the first thing that came to my mind, which was thank you for admitting what people have such a vested interest in denying, right?
Yes.
And then I went on to tell him a few things that he could do to sort of integrate his life, because that's the thing, you know, we make it seem like it's so intractable and impossible and difficult just because it's been here for so long. But it's not that hard to actually look racist beliefs and ideas in the face, identify them, don't suppress them, don't be ashamed that in a society where racism is like the oxygen that we breathe, we are inhaling it, and yes, we exhale it from time to time. Don't be ashamed of it, laugh at it, and put it aside and recommit yourself to the fight to make sure that it doesn't determine the life chances of anybody in our society. That's what we have to do. And so in shorter, simpler words, that's what I said to this Gary from North Carolina on C-SPAN. The moment went viral, but it struck me at that moment more than at any other time that there is a cost of racism to white people too. And I think that actually when we only talk about white privilege, which is real, you can count it, you can weigh it, you can smell it, you can feel it, but it's not the whole story.
Right.
Because when we only talk about the way that racism advantages white people and disadvantages people of color, we're actually buying into the same zero-sum paradigm of racial competition that says we are groups that are ineffably separate, and therefore what is good for one group is necessarily bad for the other. And that's not true.
Right.
We are in this society together. We breathe the same air, racked by pollution because of environmental injustice. Excuse me. There's a study that shows that white people who live in segregated cities have more pollution than white people who don't. The people of color in those segregated cities have more pollution than the white people, but the white people have more in a segregated space because that city thinks it can pollute, because it thinks it can only target people of color. It's the air, people. The central metaphor of this book that I'm writing is about when towns across America, not just in the South, drained their public swimming pools rather than let Black children swim too. And it feels like that's in so many ways what we have been doing since integration across this country. We have pulled back from funding higher education in a way that it used to be basically free when the student population was white. And now that the student population is more diverse, we have cut back on funding and said, you know what, you pay for it. And in fact, keep paying for it for decades and decades, because debt is what we know what to do to Black and brown people. There are so many more examples, and writing this book has taken me to the strangest places, and I know that you experience this too, where you start somewhere and it keeps going, and you're digging and you're digging, and you realize that in fact racism is the organizing principle of our society. Has been from the very beginning. It was the only way to excuse the engine of our economic growth, the kidnapping of millions, the slaughter of millions. And so we have to recognize that this can't just be our problem. And for white Americans, I think it's important to articulate a way in which they have skin in the game and invite the multiracial coalition that has been so elusive, because the plutocrats have always used race to divide us, have always used race to divide white and brown and Black people from one another, even when they have common interests. But I think that multiracial coalition is forming right now in America. It is race conscious, it's not colorblind, and it is going to propel a new social contract. And you know, you wrote your book, your most recent book, as a sermon to white America. You know, in many ways, we're in a conversation with white America.
Yes.
Say a little bit more about why you felt like that needed to be an audience at this moment.
No, what you're saying is so important, and please don't assume that that's the norm. There's a lot of skepticism among Black people. Why are you talking to white folk? Why are you trying to explain stuff to them? Right? You remember Malcolm X? Remember Malcolm X in Boston? And he's giving him the what for? And then he travels to New York, and the white girl from Boston is so taken by what Malcolm has said, moved by his words of indictment, relentless and vigorous engagement. And she's like attracted to that. I want to figure out what to do. And so she hunts him down, so to speak, tracks him down in New York and says, Minister Malcolm, what can I do, a white girl? And you know the famous answer, nothing.
Nothing.
Right? Now, he admitted later it was wrong.
Right.
But that, and I don't want to indict black people. That's an understandable thing. My students say, I ain't came to school. They've said it better than that. You said, is that what you're teaching them at Georgetown, really? I ain't came to school? Really, though? Yes, we know dangling participles, gerunds, and the like, right? But African-American vernacular English articulates deep and profound philosophical sensibilities that are exhausted in the infinite capacity of speaking the king's English to the queen's taste. So, I ain't came to school to be teaching white folk. I got grades to get. I got stuff to do. I ain't trying to educate folk. So I got up before the class one day. I said, I feel you. I didn't come to Georgetown to be teaching white. Oh, yeah, I did, actually. oh, wait a minute. That's my job. Oh, my God. Of course.
Yeah.
Is it unfair? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is it burdensome? Yes. Would I rather be just Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Georgetown, and not all the students of color and a lot of others who come to me because they saw me on TV or because they need to have a conversation they can have with others? Is that in my paycheck? No, but is it necessary? Yes. Yes. And so it is a burden in that sense, the women dealing with ignominious sexism and patriarchy, having to educate foolish men every day. No extra pay for that. And that's daily, right?
In fact, less pay.
Oh, come on. 70%
Right.
on the dollar. So the thing is that there is a legitimate and healthy skepticism about, hey, part of the Black Lives Matter and the self-care movement, and I must admit, I'm outside that parameter, you know, and initially I joked about it like, man, Dr. King had to stop in the middle of the March on Washington. I have to go to my psychological therapy. I'll be back on the road after this. That was, you know, it was funny, but it wasn't right, because King could have used some of that therapy. Right, could have used some of that relief. When they opened his body up at 39 years old, they said he had the heart of a 65-year-old man. The pressure was relentless. He was clinically depressed. So I say that to say, I understand the legitimate and healthy skepticism that many black people have about this, and yet the reason I think we cannot help but respond to white brothers and sisters, given what you said about the rising interest in and investment in by white folk of a race-conscious coalition, of trying to do something serious. When folk want to know, you got to answer. When they ask you, you got to tell them. And my book, deliberately, I know there's a movement among many African-American writers, look, and it's wonderful. Toni Morrison said, I write for black people.
Yeah.
If y'all listen in, that's good.
Yeah.
Right? There's something beautiful about that. Because now she doesn't determine her philosophical oeuvre. She doesn't determine what the baseline is for her by looking at a dominant European culture and missing out on the mythopoetry of her own indigenous African base. Right? That blackness that resided in Lorain, Ohio. So that's beautiful. I got that too. You can hear it. The gut bucket is in me. Unapologetically. I'm too old to major in anything else right now. This is what I've been. This is what I do. However, it is critical and vital what Ms. McGee has said in terms of trying to explain. Right? Lucy, you got some explaining to do? We got to explain. Help demystify, demythologize, deconstruct what's going on here. And in that sense, we have to have a conversation that says to white folk, Martin Luther King Jr. said a long time ago, it's killing you. He's in jail in Birmingham. His white jailer comes to him, you know, Dr. King, the warden too. Segregation is right and integration is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. He said, no, it's not. And they argued. And then he finally said, how much money do you make? And when that white jailer told him, King said, hell, you need to be out here marching with us.
That's right.
Because poor white people are not being advantaged by Donald Trump.
That's right.
Isn't that the tragedy? Isn't that the harsh irony that the very folk who invested in what Du Bois in 1935, read Black Reconstruction, he called it a psychological wage of whiteness. At least I ain't a nigger. That's what they tell them. At least you're not a Negro. We're ripping you off. You ain't got no good money. We're not paying you a fair wage. You are poor, white trash. We got you on the wrong side of the tracks too. We got you in indentured servitude. But at least you're not black. This is what Du Bois in 1935 talked about. So if we can tell white folk in terms, your water system is our water system, right? What's more childish than saying white water fountain, black water fountain? Dude, it's the same water, right? Like it ain't like it's you getting water from Mars, right? So what's more childish and yet inane and insipid and just dumb to believe that you can somehow segregate natural resources? Now, you can redirect them toward yourself. You can redistribute wealth to yourself. You can keep kids in poor schools, and you can make the society horrible. But even there, to extend what Ms. McGee is talking about, the stuff's gonna come back on you. You think you segregating yourself from poor society. You think you're somehow quarantining your kids, and then your kids are the ones who are the mass murderers. They blowing shit up. We're in a church. Shit 'em and jet 'em up. They are destroying the moral infrastructure that you have protected them against. You thought the threat was a Negro. You thought the threat was some black person out there, some Latinx, some person that works, gets up, you call lazy. They get up at 3 a.m. in the morning. You ain't getting up that early, except if you're trying to look for some more opioids. Those of us making it while we're demonizing those who are on the margin. So yeah, white supremacy and racism destroys the heart of an entire community and country. And it is wrecking us right now. And the investment in so many white brothers and sisters in a guy who doesn't fundamentally care for them. This is not your friend. And the tragedy is, though, right after the election, on, I'll say our side, I'll make it the royal we, choose yourself. But when Bernie Sanders said, see, this is the problem. The problem is, yes, I like women and I like blacks, and I wrote the damn bill. But he said, we got to go back. Wait, slow down now. On the left, we have to go back to the universal? To be race transcending? This is a liberal idea? This is an enlightened ideal? Now you want to take us back to what you think is neutral? Whiteness is always seen as objective and therefore neutral. To be neutral in whiteness is to reinforce the status quo, which is white observant. Neutrality is the friend of whiteness. Neutrality is the machinery of whiteness. Objectivity is the infrastructure of whiteness, because whiteness has been rendered invisible and therefore normal and therefore neutral. It is seen as American. The great philosopher Beyonce knows said that it has been said that racism is so American that if we challenge racism, it looks as if we are challenging America. So when Miss McGee talks about the price to be paid, not zero sum, because you look at an argument about capitalism. Capitalism has actually helped a whole bunch of people. So it's not we're going to say, oh, capitalism has been altogether bad, that zero sum thinking. No, it's been great. But can you imagine an alternative where many more people could be helped? Yeah, it's been good, but it's been limited. So we ain't going to say either or. Either it's capitalism, socialism, right? We know that many good things have happened, but far better things could happen if we were to embrace a much more open-minded, engaged perspective that allows us to see each other as human. And if we refuse to do that, I think we're sinking American civilization.
That's so right, Michael. And, something you said before about how central hope is to the black politic is just really real for me. I'm going to tell a personal story. So the thing happened in November of 2016, And, you know, I was at a watch party with some progressive groups, some grassroots groups, some labor unions here in New York, and I saw things. I saw his face continue to come up on the screen with the check mark next to it, and I just I withdrew. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just picked up my bag, and I walked out into the night, and I felt, it was like, I felt an armor just sort of falling in plates all over my body and my mind. It felt heavy. It felt sort of sequential down to my toes. But at the same time, it felt somewhat comforting. And it was, I don't know if you've ever had an explosion happen near you. I hope not. But that ringing in your ears that happens, and the sort of clarity in that moment where you can sort of sense nothing and yet everything. That's what I felt. And what the refrain was that you've been preparing for this your whole life. Your ancestors knew. I used to say in the fight that we are in for a more just world, you know, no matter how hard it gets, my ancestors had to do so much more with so much less. And they knew about this man. And the forces that he is marshaling and leaving in corners across this country for us to clean up for the next generation. But the next day I woke up and went to work. And at that time I was running Demos, a progressive think tank. That's a multiracial organization, lots of millennials, and, you know, and many white folks. And, you know, we had a breakfast meeting. You know, I said, called everybody in, and I'm still got my armor on, right? I'm still sort of hearing things and seeing things, but not really. You know, I'm just like, boom, 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 and everyone around me who is white is in tears, and I just couldn't muster them. I knew why they were crying. I knew the stakes as well as they did, but I both wasn't surprised, and then I also wasn't as despairing at the exact same time. Right? And it made me think about the centrality of hope to the Black politic. Right? So many of the articles about Elijah Cummings, the Honorable, this week have said, you know, the child of sharecroppers, right? He was the child of sharecroppers, and he really did, but he did not get to live to see it, take down a corrupt president.
That's right.
You know, I'm the descendant of enslaved people on both sides. And so hope is so central. And I think in many ways, just as our hands have been the engine that have made so much of America's wealth and so much of America's foundations, I think our hope has in many ways been the engine of American political renewal. And I don't want to leave it there, because I think it's worth it for us to think about what is it that we are seeing that is unseen in this moment.
That's powerful.
I think about sometimes my job as someone who's trying to advance over the horizon policy ideas before they're politically possible, as I'm standing in the future and I turn around and say, come on, y'all, it's warm up here, right? This is what it's going to be. I think about a society in the very near future, relatively speaking, where we truly have policies and practices in place that force us into relationship with one another. Because that is, if there is anything to be exceptional about this country, now more than ever, my son's generation is the most diverse generation in American history. There is no racial or ethnic minority in the generation of my son, who is part Black, part Pakistani, part white himself. I see a national service plan where every young person is doing the work to rebuild this country, and not just the hard infrastructure, not just digging ditches and paving roads and planting trees, but also caring the human infrastructure, volunteering in elderly homes and daycares and doing theater in the parks with children after school. That's just something that every young person does at some point in some other part of the country than where they live. I see that, and I see what it does to those people. And it's not just like the Peace Corps, it's every young person. And they do it with health care, without debt. They do it while they are learning to care for and know one another. That's just one piece of what I see. What do you see, Michael?
No, that's powerful. That's so powerful. Great. You know, to amplify one of those themes and to reweave one of those threads, you know, I was watching Saturday Night Live after the election, and they had as host Dave Chappelle, and he had on with him Chris Rock. And y'all seen this. The white folk are just going crazy. Oh my God. It's the worst thing ever. Like in history ever. And they look at each other like, yeah, all right. Right? It's like when Obama got off a good one against Trump when he was like, this, you know, one of his infinitely perishable themes of the worst ever, worst ever. And Obama said, I guess he missed that Black history lesson, huh? Like about slavery, Jim Crow. Guess you missed all that.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, having been through the horror, having endured the trauma, there's a coarsening, you know, there's a kind of callous on the spirit. Some people might think black people are disaffected, can't afford to be emotionally manipulated by every wind that blows, because there's so much pain, and once we begin to express it, it might not stop. Number two, we don't have the luxury of cynicism. Right? Cynicism is the luxury of those who got time to think about it. Let me look at my navel because, my God, it's pretty rough out here, right? But when your back is against the wall, you ain't theorizing. Let me contemplate de Tocqueville and the infinite possibilities of democracies spread through channels and media that permit me, no, you got to like get up and fight. Put the foot in front of the next one. What you said you did the next day. Get up and do the work. Do the impossible in the name of the not yet born. And if black folk have had any key word in our culture, it's next. Right? You take our stuff, we're going to come up with something else. You rip off the blues, then we got R&B, you took that, then we got hip hop. Please don't take that. So far, so good. You got Eminem, but that's about it. Right. We don't even know that Little Richard and Chuck Berry. Right? What do you think the Beatles got? Ooh, that's Little Richard. That's Richard Penniman. We don't know that. We think it's Paul, Ringo, George, and John. Love them. Right? Love them. But even at that level, derivative of an unacknowledged blackness that gave both theme and substance to so much of this culture. The reason we hope is because we know what it can really be and what it was meant to be when white folk ain't messing it up. And so you think that superiority goes to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. But even Hamilton, the musical, should tell you there's always a logic that is outside of the parameters of the normative and the accepted and the status quo that gives deeper meaning and longer vision to something that white brothers and sisters in an imaginative way gave birth to, but that we were the co-authors of as well. When Dr. King said, we ain't going nowhere. We built this joint. Well, I'm going to build it to leave it, right? And so what I see is a fierce determination of young people to really come to grips with what's going on. But I do not believe in the inevitable progress of younger people. I've seen too much bigotry located in that collective, right? They did I think it was a Pew study of millennials, with the exception of interracial marriage and interracial relationships, they thinking just like they daddies and mamas about race. Spend too much time talking about it. My God, why are they getting those unfair advantages? These are the enlightened ones, right? But it doesn't happen because of generation. It happens because of genre. If you were a jerk 100 years ago, chances are you'd be a jerk 100 years later. That's a species unto itself, jerkdom, right? This is jerkishness, right? I mean, there have been jerks before Donald Trump. I know it's hard. He's so original that you think, my God, he must have invented jerkiness. That's what a genius jerky is, right? Because genius means that you do something that's been done before, but you make people think it's the first time it's been done because of the original way you do it. He has given new meaning to as hollowness. And what's interesting is that here's a guy who stands up every morning to excrete the feces of his moral depravity into a nation he has turned into a psychic commode. Every day. And yet, he will not have the last word.
No.
What Heather McGhee began with when she said soon and very soon, if I can pick up on that gospel's theme, he gonna be gone, right? I don't care how long it is, you gonna be gone sooner rather or later. And what we have to do in the aftermath is piece together this culture and this civilization. But hopefully, many of our white brothers and sisters have learned lessons that you won't forget real fast. Because soon as that is over, you go like, whoo, back to normal. Please not. Please let's not go back to normal, because normal is what produced him.
That's right.
The normal produced the abnormality. Let's not go back to normal. Let's get to health. And health is, let's tell the truth about who we are. As Ms. McGhee said earlier, let's grapple with the fact that, as Gore Vidal said, we live in the United States of amnesia. And it's not that, it's amazing to me that when I hear people go, to tell black people or women too, enough of that. Why do you got to keep going back? How many more slave movies do we have to have? Are you joking? How many movies y'all done made that are bad, second rate, third rate, but it was successful, so you start remaking it again, right? How many more times do we have to see the reenactment of the Civil War? How many more books on Jefferson and Lincoln? Love them. I read most of them, try to. But dadgum, 150 a year. How many books on the Founding Fathers, mothers, and brothers? But boy, let a person of color write something and it's more than, oh my God. Do we have to do it? Let it go. You in your Confederate hat and in the shadow of Robert E. Lee and the reenactment of a farcical, comedic grasp of American democratic ethos. No, so let's not let it go. Let's understand what that history is about. And where I see us being is that we are capable. The blessing of Donald Trump, and I hesitate to even use that, but the blessing, the advantage of Donald Trump is that ain't no hiding place down here, right? You remember, went to the Rock to hide my face, rock crowd out, ain't no hiding place. Donald Trump is a Rorschach, a litmus test, and he's a vacuum cleaner, and he's also an exposer of the bullcrap. And for all these people, I was in the room, I didn't make any observations then, I have no observations to make now. You are ridiculous, right? This shows us that whiteness will go to no end, will never spare anything in order to protect it, because the real religion in America is whiteness. The real democracy in America is driven by whiteness. And if we are to overcome it, and I'll end by saying this at this part, look at the backlash against Nicole Hannah-Jones in 1619. You would think America would be like, oh my God, it's more history. It's great. 1619. It's amazing. Now we know 1619 when the first time Negroes came here, right, or were brought here. We know we could do a kind of, seriously aggressive, accurate understanding of history to render it diachronic and synchronic, and there were people here in the 1500s. And that ain't the point. The point is 1619 is iconic. Mm-hmm. It's representative of what happened in a major shift, a Gutenberg shift in the culture, reading it differently, the moral dyslexia of America, reading things backward. And the hate that this woman has received for simply helming a project in a culture that, if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, all the time is obsessed with history. Mm-hmm. If you can control it, if you can manipulate it, if it tells a good story about you, if it's about your folk. And the beauty of what that project is that it forces us to come to grips. She said, ain't no America without us. Ain't no American story without the enslavement. She ain't the first one. Go read Orlando Patterson's Pulitzer Prize winning book on freedom, where he says we can't even conceive of democracy and freedom, but especially freedom without the enslaved. It is the contradistinction that works itself out. So the 1619 Project reminds us that we say we want to learn history. We don't. We want to learn a story that can help us weave our history as magnificent. But real history, engaging the facts on the ground, means that we're willing to tell the truth about both our complicity with inequity and evil and our refusal any longer to go along with it. When Donald Trump is gone, let's also hope that what will be gone is our refusal to deal with the truth, the amnesia that we have collected to ourselves. And I'll say this, Donald Trump is right about stuff just at the wrong time, right? He talks about the fake news. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, he's tripping, because he is the perpetuator of fake news and the perpetrator.
But Michael, that's how he does it, though. That's why it's whiteness, right? Everything that he's ever done, he has accused somebody else of doing. And is that not one of the core ways that whiteness, and I'm not talking about white people, I'm talking about whiteness as the ideological identity construct.
Right.
One of the core features is projection. And of course, how could it not be, right? How can you create a goodness for yourself when you are those who have kidnapped and raped and murdered and separated families and stolen, and yet black people are the criminals?
Let's see, and that's just very quickly, that's so brilliant. I mean, more brilliant than the point I was about to make, but let me just, what I was going to say. No, it was powerful, but I was going to say this. But it leads, if it bleeds, it leads. The media that is now on its haunches and mad at Donald Trump also savage black people and women. This same media is now so arrogant. Oh my God, how dare he? You're the same media that misrepresents black people. You put us on TV in hair curls. You go to the wrong, you go to the hood, right? And then you isolate people, and then you try to reinforce our ignorance. Yes, there is fake news, just not the one Donald Trump is talking about. But the fake news of white supremacy did not begin with the media getting on its haunches about Donald Trump. It has been complicit, and the news media has been wrong. The FBI? Don't you know one of the most tragic consequences of Donald Trump's presidency is to force black people to defend the FBI? I mean, it's hard, dog. It's hard. It's like, we're going like, James Comey is a hero. Oh my God! Robert Mueller is, okay, he's whack. But the same FBI, Donald Trump is right about the FBI, just not about this era.
Right.
Martin Luther King Jr. was in endangered in his life, and the FBI refused to tell him where the threats were coming. The FBI was complicit with local sheriffs to hurt and harm black people. Everything Donald Trump is saying is right, except it's about black people as victims of the white supremacy he perpetuates. So everything, the fake news, the FBI, and the and talking about what the manipulation of American history does to marginalize people. Everything he's saying is true, but it ain't true about him, and therefore the lie is even more vicious. So you're absolutely right. Whiteness as a construct, whiteness as an ontological assertion, whiteness as something of a template that we have has to be unmasked, has to be deconstructed. And when we do that, it relieves the burden of white people. Lying to yourself about being superior when you know it ain't true. You ain't got to carry that burden no more, right? Don't have to believe that you have to run the world anymore and therefore ruin the world, because those who run it ruin it. And I think in this case, if we can give up some of that arrogance in exchange for our humanity in return, I think it would be incredible. So I think your book, The Air We Breathe, that could be a good title, right? The Air We Breathe.
I did tell him I was looking for a title.
Right, The Air We Breathe. I'm trying to give it, I think that could work right now. The Air We Breathe, because we all breathing together. This water we drink, but I like the air we breathe, because it's polluted and it's environmental.
Guys, I want to welcome you to this far end where I do usually make my comments of the video that you have just watched a minute ago. So guys, I want you to think about the country you live in, your roads. I want you to think about the schools. Think about the hospitals, your environment, your economy. These things affect everybody. And Mark G's argument is that when a society allows racial divisions and inequality to influence its decisions, the damage doesn't necessarily stop with the people being discriminated against, and it can eventually affect everyone. That is a difficult idea for many people to accept, because when we hear the discussions about racism, some people immediately think there's someone else's problem. But the argument being made here is different, guys. It says that system built around exclusion can weaken the entire society. And that is where these conversations becomes bigger than politics, guys. I want to now, guys. I want us to talk about something many people grow up believing: if you work hard enough, you will succeed. And that is where you find that most of the parents, they believe that taking their kids to schools, it will better their lives tomorrow. But let me tell you, education shapes you to become a person who has skills. You know, most of the people think that if you go to school, you'll get employed, of which I don't deny that, because that is not how the system works in other countries. So we take our kids to school so that they may get those skills, and those skills, they'll help them to get the jobs, and they will help them to work very well in their environments. If you work hard enough, guys, you will succeed. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Hard work absolutely matters. But Denson and McGee challenge the idea that hard work is the only explanation for success, because people don't always begin the race from the same starting line. Some families inherit wealth. Some communities have better schools. Some people have easy access to opportunities. Others grow up using barriers that have existed long before they were born. So, when someone succeeds, we should be careful about assuming that their journey tells the entire story. And when someone struggles, we should also be careful about immediately blaming that person for not working hard enough. This doesn't mean individuals' responsibility doesn't matter. It means history matters too. And if we refuse to understand history, we can end up misunderstanding the present. Guys, that brings us to the political climate surrounding Donald Trump. Regardless of whether someone supports Trump or opposes him, the conversation it raises a larger question. What happens when a country becomes deeply divided over race? When it becomes deeply divided over identity and political power? Because political arguments can come and go. Presidents, they come and go. But the divisions underneath those arguments can remain for generations. And that is why confronting uncomfortable history matters. Not because people should spend their entire lives blaming one another for the past, but because you cannot effectively solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. And yet, despite all these, there's something incredibly important in the message from Dyson and Mark G. That is hope, guys. You know, and this is perhaps the part people sometimes overlook. The history of Black America is not only a history of suffering, it is also a history of resilience. People endured slavery, guys, during the colonizations. They endured segregation. They endured discrimination, guys. They faced violence, exclusion, and enormous obstacles. And yet they continued to build families, communities, institutions, businesses, churches, movements, and dreams, guys. That means hope is not simply pretending everything will be okay. Sometimes hope is the decisions to keep moving forward even when the circumstances are difficult. And perhaps that is the lesson we should take from this video or from this conversation. America cannot build a better future by pretending its history never happened. But neither can it build the future by remaining permanently trapped in the past. We have to understand the history. We have to recognize the inequalities that still exist. We have to challenge the division that keeps communities apart. And at the same time, we have to believe that change is possible. Because if a previous generation could endure circumstances that seemed impossible and still find reasons to hope, then perhaps we should not give up either, guys. History can explain where we came from, but it does not have to determine where we are going. And maybe that is where the real power of hope comes from. Not from ignoring reality, not from looking directly at a reality and saying we can still do better. So, guys, that is all that I have to say for today. And I want to appreciate you for watching this video until the end. And I want to say thanks for watching. And if you're new here, don't forget to like. You can also subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one, guys.